continuing Inman news assault. Is that what we want to call it? I mean, Inman News has been fired up about this whole NAR sexual harassment thing like I've never seen Inman News fired up about maybe like anything recently. And we're actually going to mention Rob Hahn's take on this because everyone's noticed that Inman has been all over this Kenny Parcell sexual harassment thing, but they've been less vocal about another topic, and Rob Hahn was wise enough to point that out. So we'll bring his Substack up about that later in this live stream or this episode. So right off the bat, let's talk about insulting at a minimum. Realtors strike back as NAR holds the line. This is from Inman. Realtors are canceling memberships, hounding local boards and organizing petition drives days after NAR resisted calls Thursday to censure Bob Goldberg for his handling of the misconduct claims. And we want accountability right now. This is from today, September 5th, at Inman. It's a top story at Inman. I think we're glitchy again. There we go. That's better. The money quote here comes from Hope Burka. I'm sure I mispronounced your name, Hope. Forgive me. Bareka? I hope that's better. She's the owner and principal of Fink Real Estate in Portland, Oregon, and she told Inman, NAR's top-down decision-making is completely tone-deaf. We're asking for transparency and accountability to have leadership require cell phones left behind. And marshal everyone into a room and come out with completely top-down decision is something so raw and critical, feels insulting at a minimum. It's really bad faith behavior. And what she's talking about is the meeting that occurred in Chicago on Thursday. And that was basically a vote of confidence for CEO Rob Goldberg. Sorry, trying to run a business here. Phone went off. Forgive me. So they had a meeting in Chicago on Thursday, which if you were invited to it, if you were one of the Star Chamber members of NAR and you got invited to the meeting, you couldn't bring your cell phone. That's how much they actually trust you and or their membership, right? And so in that meeting, they voiced their support for Bob Goldberg. Oh, Bob, you didn't do anything wrong with this whole Kenny Parcell sexual harassment situation. No, not at all. Because if they were going to point it at Bob, if they're going to throw Bob overboard, that basically means they throw themselves overboard, and they can't do that. And effectively, that's what Hope is mentioning in this article. And I don't know her in any way, shape, or form, but I just think her quote is fantastic. And again, she's referring to the announcement on Thursday that the newly installed president, Tracy Casper from Idaho, is in support of embattled Chief Executive Bob Goldberg. Hope has a other money quote further down in this article. Let me scroll down to it here. Here it is here. There is a disconnect in power. Many articles have been written about the quote-unquote ivory tower of NAR headquarters. This shows how disconnected the leadership is from the rank-and-file members. Actually, I was talking about this last week. The decision-making that is happening illustrates to me there is absolute corruption inside a system that may need to look very hard at seriously dismantling the NAR system. So exactly, I mean, what does this say to your rank and file agent who's just trying to make a living out there or supplement their existing income, whatever their financial goal is of being an agent? This is what their association is thoroughly and absolutely engrossed in. Are they engrossed in supporting the agents front line? No, they're engrossed in this nasty sexual harassment situation, which, if you're not familiar with, effectively, amongst other things, Kenny Parcell, the former president, was having allegedly, because he totally denies it, an affair with one of the staffers at NAR. So he's the president of NAR, and he was having an affair with one of the staffers at NAR. Allegedly, once again, he denies it, but yet he's resigned last week. So, but completely denies it. He's a martyr, after all. So there's been basically a giant Me Too movement. Remember, we had Me Too a couple of years ago. Now it's back in the form of so many leaders in this industry. Remember, the real estate industry, not that this should actually matter because sexual harassment is bad, whether there's 3% women in the business or 97% women in the business. And also, I would say, just because you're a woman doesn't, if you're a guy, you can also be subject to sexual harassment. It happens, right? So the percentage doesn't matter, but it's from a principle point of view, but it's a practical political issue. And I think almost 2/3 of our industry, 62%, something like that, are female agents. And so it's from a political practical point of view, it is a big issue in our business. And that's what Susan, and I'm going to get her name wrong. Forgive me so much again. I'm going to get her name wrong again. Oh my God, let's see if you can pronounce it for me. Sue Yannaccone. That's what I'm going with. Again, Sue, if I got your name wrong, forgive me. Time to get the house in order. She is the CEO of Anywhere, or anywho, Reology, the big name brand. And Anywhere Brands writes that this is the time for leaders to find and use their voices that the industry reflects the values it promotes. Because right now that's not happening. You might remember she posted on LinkedIn last week when Kenny Parcell originally wasn't going to resign. And it was her post amongst several other posts on social media that was basically like, no, Kenny, you got to go. What I think is very important here, and what NAR is trying to do, is basically say the whole issue was Kenny Purcell, right? They're trying to say, by giving him the boot, they're trying to say the whole thing was Kenny Purcell, rather than some other larger systematic problem. Because if that happens, then the liability spreads to Bob Goldberg and to Casper, the new president. If they can just say it's one bad apple and we got rid of that bad apple, then they don't really have to look inward to themselves. It was just one bad apple. But according to the New York Times article, it was systemic. It was systemic, and that's what the president of, or the CEO of Anywhere Brands is trying to say in this article. Let me just scroll down here, see if we have the money quote. Here it is here. Allegedly, and this is her words here, allegedly, no, we cannot. Complacency and ignorance have been deeply ingrained into the largest industry organizations, the National Association of Realtors. Let's think about that for a moment. There are serious allegations that an organization designed to support those in the trade who are predominantly female and who pay them to be part of it may have a problem, not just with sexual harassment, but covering it up. Thank you, Sue Yannaccone. Yes, in other words, this is not just a Kenny Purcell problem. This is a systematic problem with the National Association. And if you don't realize that, and understand what the NAR leadership is trying to do right now, is they're trying to throw Kenny overboard in order to protect themselves, telling you it's a Kenny problem and not a bigger problem. Wow. I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen Inman be so aggressive with their news articles on this. I mean, we've had opinion pieces. We had a Brad Inman piece himself. I mean, it's just been every story, it seems. I know this is an exaggeration, but every lead story for the last week or whatever on Inman has basically been about this NAR scandal, about sexual harassment scandal with Mr. Parcell. All again is allegedly, because he denies it, even though he's resigned, and some of these cases have been settled out of court. But, that's what it's been about at NAR, at Inman. And the news coverage at Inman has been just never ending, relentless on this topic. So I thought that was good. I thought, Inman, I kind of view Inman as something where I get information from, but then again, I always think it's biased in favor of the industry because they're kind of like the mouthpiece of the industry, right? How independent are they, really? Right? Because they also depend upon brokers and agents to sign up and be part of Inman. So are they really going to be super critical of the industry itself? Well, in this particular case, they have been. And to me, that was actually somewhat surprising. And I pointed this out at one of our prior videos on this topic. What I was really impressed with is that actually Rob Hahn took that to the next level, actually. Let's see if we can bring his article up here in just a second. Rob Hahn, notorious ROB, also the co-host of Industry Relations Podcast. He pointed out that there is a massive dichotomy going on here between how the industry has treated this sexual harassment situation with how the industry has treated the San Diego financial incompetence allegations. So for those of you who might not be aware, and you can go back, we've made videos on this, the San Diego Association of Realtors is charged with massive, allegedly, financial misconduct. Now, to be fair, the San Diego situation is a San Diego situation. It's not a national situation like the Parcell situation or one's local, one's national. So you might not get as much attention to a local thing than you would a national thing. Keep that in mind. Rob Hahn looks at and actually details in this article. I got to sign into Substack to get this article here. Forgive me. Hold on a second. Rob Hahn points out in this Substack article, which apparently I won't be able to show you because Substack. He's basically pointing out that the industry as a whole is basically saying, and this is paraphrasing his quote, you can't sexually harass anybody, but you can steal as much money as you want, is basically what Rob Hahn is saying. The way the industry has treated these two conflicts is completely different. Now, he's not saying that the industry should have downplayed the sexual. No, he's saying that they treated the sexual harassment story as they should have, and it does deserve all of the focus that it's gotten, and I totally agree with that. But I also believe that the San Diego Association story got hardly any attention at all. And I know it's a local story, but on the other hand, it's gotten like no attention. I mean, you can't find probably any story, hardly a trace amount of stories about the San Diego financial malfeasance. Nothing. Which makes you wonder, and what Rob Hahn is basically saying, the big picture message is, you can steal as much money as you want from an association, but don't sexually harass anybody. Really, of course, the message should be you shouldn't be able to do either of those things. You shouldn't be doing either of those things, but effectively, the industry is giving the association leaders a pass that are stealing money, which is wrong. And you shouldn't be sexually harassing people either. But they're definitely giving people a pass when it comes to financial improprieties. And there's big money in running these associations. And effectively, the argument is that once you get so ingrained that over time, associations become self-perpetuating and self-serving, and they forget their members. Right? We see this with all sorts of industries, all sorts of nonprofits. They exist for themselves, they get divorced from their original mission. And we're seeing that here, right, with the ignorance or their light touch relative to the financial improprieties at the San Diego Association, which go back The allegations go back like well over a decade. Comparison to Kenny Purcell, who is out, one New York Times article and he's gone. Right? So big difference there. I'm not saying that the whole Kenny Purcell should have been treated differently. I think what happened with Kenny Purcell should have happened. And also, I think instead of trying to use him as a token overboard, probably the investigation should go further. Tracy Casper probably should have kicked Bob Goldberg to the curb, but she doesn't want to do that because when she does that, it seems as if she also is pointing the finger at herself, because where has she been, right? Where has she been? Even though she's a woman, but where has she been? If she kicks Bob Goldberg to the curb, that's the next question. Where's Tracy Casper been?